Hi, this is Cindy Abbott-Litro for Behind the Camera, and today I am with Jonathan Sanger, the producer of Cabrini, which I guess is the working title of the film.
That's right.
We are on Lafayette Avenue, and they have been shooting here, and it's been exciting. I mean, you know, it's been a little, the roads are a little bit hard to get through, but it's all for a good cause, which is making films. Jonathan, the last time we talked was you were in Buffalo and you were doing
Marshall.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
And so much, you know, has happened since that, and what a fabulous movie that turned out to be.
Yeah, I'm very proud of it. I'm delighted that we filmed it here in Buffalo. It was great. I mean, this was the ideal location, and you know, we didn't know at the beginning because we really, it was new to all of us who came in, but you know, I fell in love with the city, and I decided, you know, I wanted to do more films here. So when this one came around and we were looking at potential locations, I wanted to make sure Buffalo was in the mix, and we came up here for a scout, and the director fell in love with it. I didn't have to tell him, you know, I didn't have to point anything out. He got to see some of the architecture and some of the locations, and we realized that the kinds of things that we were looking for in New York City really didn't exist anymore, and that, especially for this period, and that Buffalo was perfect. So,
you know,
really
of course,
good.
we all love to hear that from Buffalo, but we also love to hear that you wanted to come back and shoot here. And I get the feeling that you have become a Buffalo booster.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I have, but I mean, you know, obviously one reason was, you know, I mean, it works for so many periods, and it's a terrific city in that respect. But what really made the difference was the film office is amazing here, and I think, you know, I've worked with film offices all over the country and in other countries, and I think your film commissioner and deputy commissioner are the best I've worked with, and so they made it very hospitable. They brought us around. They showed us things that we would never necessarily have found, and they also took us around and helped us make deals with hotels and other things that we had to do in order to make it work. So they really knew the landscape, and it made a tremendous difference. Really.
Well, you know, for those folks, because it always comes up, you know, we do have tax credits that are available on a state level that make it very attractive, you know, for filmmakers to come here, but there are other states and other places that also do that, so that, you know, really the climate of how you're treated is what
makes
key.
No, I think that does make the difference, because look, the tax credit, of course, is a big draw for anybody, and as you said, there are a lot of states that have tax credits, and some that have you know, substantially larger tax credits than New York does right now, because New York had a 30% state credit before it went down to 25%, but they have another benefit, a higher benefit upstate here, so that helped us too. But the truth is, that's only one piece. You know, I mean, you want that, you're going to look for that, you're going to, you know, could we shoot this movie cheaper in some other location? Possibly. We could have shot it in Canada, and we might have, I mean, if, you know, COVID notwithstanding, I mean, obviously that made a difference to where we would go. We could have shot this movie in Eastern Europe. You know, people do that for a movie that's a period film. But for all of the things that we knew about the timing and COVID issues and everything else that was changing, it made the most sense to do it in the States. And of all the places in the States that really made sense, Buffalo was the best, because you know, you might get a better benefit, but you're not going to get the architecture. You're not going to get a lot of things that you do get up here, and that made a big difference. I mean, you know, we'd have to build a lot more if we went somewhere else. Here we were building onto things that already existed. I mean, you saw the location we have down on Elk Street, which is a bunch of old warehouses. Right. You couldn't have found that very many places, where you'd find a bunch of warehouses that really weren't being used much, and we could build off these brick buildings and create alleys and streets. I don't know where else we could have done that, you know, at the cost and ability that we were able to do it for here. So I'm very happy about that.
And I guess what I'd like to know is, maybe in your words, what your focus is for this film, and what it was that attracted you to it.
Well, it's interesting. I met the financier, Eustace Wolfington, who is a really interesting man. He lives in Philadelphia, and he's been in the car business forever. His family had made coaches before there were cars, and so and he's known. I mean, if you look him up on Google, you'll see that he's the inventor of the car lease. Nobody knew what a car lease was, or did them until he came up with the idea and sold it to all the major car companies. But the connection with Cabrini kind of was related to that. When I first met him, I said, "Well, why do you want to make a movie? I mean, I don't understand. You're not in the movie business." And he said, "Well, I'm not really interested in making any movie, but this particular story means a lot to me." So I said, "Well, why is that?" So he said, "Well, I was trying to sell this idea of car leases for forever, and for 10 years, 15 years, and I couldn't get anybody to be interested because they all said, well, people want to own stuff, they don't want to lease stuff, that kind of thing."
Right.
So he said, and he was just about to give up. He said he was sitting in his church, and behind him was the statue, and he looked at it, and he didn't know what it was, and he asked his friend, and he said, "Oh, that's Mother Cabrini." I said, "Well, who's Mother Cabrini?" He says, "Well, she was this woman who came over to the United States in 1890 to help the Italian immigrants in Lower Manhattan and get them a better life, get them some schooling, take care of orphans, and it was a terrible place where they lived. They lived in slums, and they were not taken care of much by the city, and it was a horrible thing." And what was amazing about her is that everybody told her no, everybody told her to go home, everybody told her what she wanted to do was not possible, and that she needed money that she didn't have, and she never took no for an answer. She just kept going to the next level and the next level until she found somebody who could support her. And hearing that story, Eustace was telling me, he says, I thought, well, maybe I'll give it another few weeks, when he was about to quit. So he said, and literally within 2 weeks, he sold the idea to the Ford or General Motors, and it started to snowball. So he said, so I felt I owed her something, and she became my patron saint.
Oh, isn't that
So he
great?
said that was the beginning of the story. Well, when I met him, I said, I think it's great. I think you should make a movie, but I don't know if I'm the right guy to do this. I'm not really necessarily interested in doing a religious story about a saint. I mean, I kind of like to deal with people who live in this world and deal with problems. And he said, no, you misunderstand. He said, I don't want to make a religious story either. He says, this is a woman empowerment story. This is a story about a woman. The fact that she was a nun is secondary to the story. The story is really the fact that she was, it was a woman in a world that was controlled by men specifically, but also by monolithic organizations,
Sure.
by the church, by the city council, and all of these organizations were run by men, and nobody really took her seriously at the beginning, and everybody told her, as I said, that she wouldn't be able to do what she wanted to do, and that she just should go home and work in her own town and make things better there, but that she wasn't really going to be able to do that. And again, that became the focus for me. That was the interesting thing, as you'll notice.
Well, and the time is certainly right.
Yeah,
right
well,
now.
I think the time is perfect, because what she was known for, and for posterity, was the fact that she became the patron saint of immigrants. So it's an immigration story as well as a woman empowerment story, both of which to me are as current as anything on the news any minute.
Right.
That's all we're talking about these days. So it isn't an old story about something that happened 120 years ago. It's about a story as current as today. And we have to make the connection, I think, with an audience to show them that this is something that is, the issues haven't disappeared. They've only continued. And we need people like her. And we're finding them now, whoever they may be, but the strong women who have been able to push positive agendas. And I think she was one of the early examples of somebody who did this in an amazing way.
How did you find the person to portray this? Because as I understand, it's not someone that most Americans would be.
Well, it was an interesting thing, because we looked at all of the major young actresses who might have been possible for it, and I think it wasn't a financial issue, because we could have gotten a lot of people. It's a great role, and a lot of people would have wanted it. But one of the requirements to us was that she either be able to speak Italian or learn Italian. She had it because she was native Italian from northern Italy. She learned English to come here, but it was not her first language. And as we started thinking about it, we realized we thought of people who might have been able to do it. Sure, we know, and we could have shot this all in English, but we decided that it made more sense. There's a whole lot of there are a number of Italians, and we shoot a little bit in Italy, and all of that was going to be in Italian anyway. So we figured having somebody whose native language was Italian would be great, but could we find somebody who was good enough?
And you did.
So we went to our casting director, Denise Shamian, who was in Los Angeles, and she reached out to an Italian casting director that she knew, and we started looking at people who might potentially be right. And she was right. I mean, the woman that we found, we looked at a lot of them, but we found Cristiana Delana, and Cristiana was kind of a star in Italy. She's known in Italy.
Okay.
She's the lead in the series Gomorrah, but we hadn't seen her here. And so we went and we looked at her, and the role in Gomorrah couldn't be further from Cabrini, but she looked right. And then we saw her in a couple of other things, and she was always different. She always seemed completely different in whatever role she played. So we said, okay, this is somebody who could be up to the challenge of really portraying this woman. And ultimately we contacted her, and we did a kind of a Zoom audition. Alejandra did, our director, and she just did it. I mean, she was perfect, and he was just enthralled by her. She thought she was great, and he called me up and he said, I think this is the one. I think we got to see, so we, you also have to think about the economics of it. You're always looking,
Sure.
oh, do we need big stars? Well, it isn't really that kind of movie.
And I am glad, because one of the things I love, and what I was sad is when I see people that dub the movies.
Yeah.
There's music to Italian
Absolutely.
that creates the scene. So
No,
I
completely agree. And the thing was, she has all of that, and we weren't going to dub. We didn't want to dub it. We wanted to use real. And in all of the major Italian roles, we have real, we brought over people from Italy,
Wow.
as well as, sure, we have known actors like David Morse, who's sensational as the Archbishop in New York. We had the Cardinal. We have John Lithgow playing the Mayor of New York. I mean, these are major actors.
Well,
so we're very excited about that.
We will be very excited to see the finished project. We're so glad that you came back to Buffalo. Jonathan Sanger, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Cindy.
And thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Behind the Camera.